Marcus held his sleeping son Daniel's hand for the last time at 2:47 a.m., tears streaming down his face as he whispered, "You'll understand someday." The 4-year-old boy didn't stir as his father kissed his forehead, grabbed a single suitcase, and walked out of their small apartment forever. His wife Emma was passed out from exhaustion after her double shift at the diner. Marcus left a note on the kitchen counter. "I can't do this anymore. I'm sorry." But this wasn't just a father leaving. This was a man who had secretly drained their savings account, every penny they'd scraped together for Daniel's future, to fund his escape to a new city where nobody knew his failures. Emma would wake up to discover not just an empty bed, but an empty bank account and a mountain of unpaid bills Marcus had been hiding for months. The betrayal wasn't just abandonment. It was calculated destruction. What Marcus didn't know as he drove away that night was that karma was already watching, and it was patient. 3 years passed. Marcus built the life he'd always dreamed of in a different state. He changed his phone number, deleted his social media, and told everyone he met that he'd never been married. He started a successful business, met Rachel, a kind woman who believed his lies about being commitment-phobic from a bad breakup, and lived in a beautiful house with a view he'd once promised Emma they'd have together. He never sent child support, never called on Daniel's birthdays, never asked if his son had enough to eat. Meanwhile, Emma worked 3 jobs to keep Daniel fed and clothed. She told her son his father had died because the truth that Marcus had chosen money and freedom over them felt too cruel for a child to bear. Daniel grew up believing his father was a hero who passed away, not a coward who ran away. Marcus convinced himself he'd made the right choice. He'd been drowning in that old life, suffocating under responsibilities he never wanted. He deserved happiness, didn't he? Everyone deserves a second chance, right? On Daniel's 10th birthday, Marcus's perfect life began to crumble. Rachel discovered she was pregnant. Marcus felt the walls closing in again, the same trapped feeling that had driven him away before. But this time was different. He'd matured, he told himself. He could be the father he'd failed to be the first time. The baby girl, Sophie, arrived healthy and beautiful. For 2 years, Marcus played the devoted dad role perfectly. He changed diapers, attended parent meetings, posted photos with captions like, "Best dad ever." But late at night, when Sophie cried, a dark voice in his head whispered, "You could leave. You've done it before. It was easy." He fought those thoughts. He was different now, better. Then Rachel's mother got sick, requiring expensive long-term care. The medical bills started piling up. Marcus's business hit rough times. The pressure mounted, and that old, familiar panic returned. One afternoon, Marcus was at the hospital visiting Rachel's mother when he saw a woman who looked hauntingly familiar, Emma. She was thinner, older, exhausted, working as a hospital janitor. She didn't see him. He hid behind a column, heart pounding, watching her mop floors with the same hands that used to hold his. Back when he'd promised her forever, he wanted to run. Instead, curiosity pulled him forward. He followed her at a distance until she entered a patient's room. Through the window, he saw her sit beside a teenage boy connected to machines. The boy's face made Marcus's knees buckle. Daniel, his son, dying. Marcus learned from hushed nurse conversations that Daniel had leukemia, stage 4. He needed an expensive bone marrow transplant that Emma couldn't afford. She'd sold everything, taken every loan, but it wasn't enough. Daniel had months left, maybe weeks, and suddenly, Marcus understood. Karma wasn't a concept, it was a mirror. Marcus returned home that night a ghost. Rachel asked what was wrong. He said nothing. For 3 days, he researched bone marrow matching, transplant costs, and survival rates. The procedure could save Daniel, but it required Marcus to reveal himself, submit to testing, potentially be a donor match. It also required money they didn't have. The same money Marcus had stolen from Emma years ago was long gone, spent on the life he'd built on lies. But there was a darker truth Marcus couldn't escape. If he came forward, Rachel would learn everything. His entire new life, the marriage, the business partnerships, the respect, all built on the fiction that he was a good man. Sophie would grow up, knowing her father had abandoned another child. Rachel would leave him. He'd lose everything he'd spent years constructing. The moral equation was brutal: save his dying son and destroy his present family, or stay silent and let Daniel die to protect his new life. Marcus chose silence. He told himself Daniel had survived without him this long. Emma would find another way. It wasn't his responsibility anymore. He was wrong on every count. 2 months later, Sophie started getting sick. Mysterious bruises, constant fatigue. Rachel rushed her to the hospital. The diagnosis hit like a freight train. Sophie had the same genetic blood disorder that had caused Daniel's leukemia, a rare inherited condition Marcus carried and had passed to both children. The doctor explained, "This is hereditary. Does your family have a history? Do you have other children we should know about?" Marcus's lies were about to kill his daughter. The only way to save Sophie was a bone marrow transplant, but Marcus wasn't a match. Rachel wasn't either. They needed a sibling donor, someone who shared Sophie's rare genetic markers, someone like Daniel. Marcus finally called Emma. His voice cracked as he said, "It's me." The silence on the other end lasted an eternity. Then Emma's voice, cold as ice, "My son is dying because of you. You took everything and now you want more?" Marcus explained about Sophie, about the genetic connection, about needing Daniel's help. Emma laughed, a broken, bitter sound. "So you need my dying son to save your healthy daughter?" The universe has a sick sense of humor, but Emma didn't hang up, because she knew something Marcus didn't. Daniel had recently gone into remission after an experimental treatment. He was weak, but alive, and against all odds, Emma had told him the truth about his father on his 13th birthday. "I'll ask him," Emma said, "but I won't force him. He gets to choose if the father who abandoned him deserves his help." Daniel agreed to meet Marcus at a coffee shop. The teenager who walked through that door bore no resemblance to the 4-year-old Marcus had left. He was tall, thin from illness, with eyes that had seen too much pain too early. "You have another daughter," Daniel said. Not a question, a statement. "Yes." "And she's sick like I was." "Yes." "And you need my bone marrow to save her." "Yes." Daniel stirred his untouched coffee. "Did you ever think about me?" Even once, Marcus wanted to lie, but something in his son's gaze demanded truth. Every day. And every day I told myself I did the right thing walking away. "Did you?" "No." The silence stretched. Then Daniel said the words that would haunt Marcus forever. "I'll do it. I'll give her my bone marrow. Not for you, for her. She didn't choose a coward as a father. But there's a price." Daniel's conditions were devastating. Marcus would confess everything to Rachel before the procedure. No more lies, no more hiding. And after Sophie was saved, Marcus would sign away all parental rights to her and leave their lives forever. Just like he'd done to Daniel. "You'll give her the same childhood you gave me," Daniel explained, wondering if her father ever loved her, questioning her worth. "That's your punishment, knowing she'll grow up in the same pain I did, because of your choices." Marcus begged for mercy. Daniel showed none. "You taught me that running away is acceptable, so run. Or stay and watch your new family learn who you really are. Either way, you lose. That's karma." Rachel's reaction to the truth was worse than Marcus imagined. She wasn't angry, she was disgusted. "You have a son dying in a hospital that you've ignored for years?" And you only told me because you need him? The divorce papers came before Sophie's surgery. Daniel's bone marrow transplant saved Sophie's life. The procedure nearly killed him. His weakened body barely survived the extraction. Emma held his hand through every moment of agony. Marcus watched from outside the room, prohibited from entering by security. Sophie recovered fully, unaware that her brother had given her a second chance at life. Rachel kept the truth from her daughter, wanting to spare her the pain of knowing her father's sins. Daniel survived too, but barely. The transplant left him with permanent complications. His childhood was stolen twice, once by his father's abandonment, once by his sacrifice to save a sister he'd never meet. 5 years later, Marcus lived alone in a small apartment, the same size as the one he'd fled from Daniel as a child. His business was gone, divided in the divorce, his reputation destroyed when the story leaked. He sent child support to both families now, court-ordered, enforced with threats of prison. But here's what Marcus didn't know. Rachel eventually told Sophie everything when she turned 10, and Sophie, raised by a mother who taught her about forgiveness and second chances, did something unexpected. She wrote Daniel a letter. The siblings began corresponding. Sophie wanted to meet her brother. Daniel, healed and grown, agreed. They met on Sophie's 12th birthday, and the bond was instant. Rachel and Emma, brought together by their children's connection, became unlikely friends. They supported each other, two women who'd survived the same man's selfishness. And Marcus? He existed on the periphery, permitted to attend Sophie's birthday parties, but never as Dad, always as Marcus. Daniel attended too, the brother Sophie adored and the son who had saved his sister despite having every reason not to. Marcus got what he wanted in the beginning, freedom from responsibility, but karma gave it to him permanently. He was free because no one wanted him. His children thrived together, bonded by their shared survival of his failures. The cruelest punishment wasn't losing his families. It was watching both his children succeed without him, proving they never needed the father who thought he was so important that his absence would destroy them. Daniel became a pediatric cancer advocate. Sophie grew up volunteering at children's hospitals. They turned their pain into purpose. Marcus just turned his regrets into sleepless nights. Some say Marcus deserved worse. Others argue he at least helped save Sophie, even if forced. Daniel's forgiveness wasn't for Marcus. It was to free himself from hate. Sophie's love for her brother gave her the family her father never could. But here's what keeps you awake at night. If you were Daniel, would you have donated the bone marrow? If you were Sophie, could you love the man who abandoned your brother? And if you were Marcus, is there any redemption possible after such betrayal? The truth is, karma doesn't always look like revenge. Sometimes, it looks like being alive to witness everyone you hurt becoming stronger without you. Sometimes, the worst punishment is surviving to see that you were never as necessary as you thought. Marcus learned that second chances aren't about starting over. They're about living with what you've destroyed, knowing it can never be rebuilt the same way. And that's a life sentence worse than any court could give.